Hello and welcome to the Professional Media Presence podcast series. In this episode, we are joined by the Croatian artist Ines Borovac, based in the Netherlands, whose practice spans performance and multimedia to explore how identity is constructed and performed in digital spaces. Growing up in the Balkans under patriarchal norms, Ines now critically examines the body within techno-capitalist systems, questioning how visibility, algorithms, and aesthetics dictate power online. Through the lens of her workshop, My Feed Brings All the Curators to My DMs, organized during the last PMP workshop week in Split, Croatia, we dive into the tension between authenticity and performance, the cultural power of cringe, and the role of the artist as a pseudo-influencer in today's algorithm-driven world.
Today we are in Split with team My Feed Brings All the Curators to My DMs. My name is Paula.
Hello, my name is Ines.
So the first question, Ines, your background combines performance and multimedia art. Could you tell us a bit about your journey? How did your artistic practice evolve to explore identity and digital culture?
Well, I think there is also a fascination that I wanted to explore that exists in my private life of being embedded in so many platforms nowadays, not just as an artist but also as a person, as person online, and this new world has opened new possibilities for different realities, and I realized that's something that is our current present symptom of the society. And speaking about social political state, the media and the internet can no longer be avoided. So and I think there's a lot of performativity happening in these platforms. So the performance, although it's not a performance as we perceive it when you say performance art, you imagine body, but I think we entered a new era of the performance, which is now bodies interacting through internet cables all over the world. So it's a different kind of performance, but I think it still affects us a lot, and it's hugely important.
You grew up in the Balkans, and your work often reflects on social and political systems. How has that environment shaped your artistic voice today?
Well, it has shaped me a lot as an artist, because it has also shaped me a lot as a person. I think I'm one of these artists that don't necessarily separate their personal influences from their artistic ones. Like in my case, one fuels the other. Therefore, when I'm researching about certain things and thinking about projects, I mostly put myself in my perspective, or the perspective that people around me have experienced, the one that I have experience in. And this cannot be separated from my Balkan upbringing, because I was living in Croatia until I was 22, so that has shaped a lot of my identity. And now that identity has shifted a bit, of course, because I live in the Netherlands, but the core of who I am is Balkan, and I think you can see that in a project as well. The core is kind of this Balkan, a little bit more violent or aggressive, or a little bit more I don't know, this weird unestheticized aesthetics that also comes from Balkan. But then the what's left around it is influenced from the Western contemporary culture. So essentially it's both are equally important to me today. And often when I do projects, even if I do projects that often stem from Balkan and the inspiration from Balkan folk rituals, I often try to ask myself, okay, how is this important to my identity today in the Netherlands? So I try to like find connections in these two and morph them into a new reality.
What first drive you to the intersection of the body, technology, and social media as a space for artistic exploration?
I think I kind of already answered that question in the first question we had, but it's essentially just like existing online. Like I think my generation is still the one that is not so hugely affected by smartphones and social media. But younger generations are like, they spend a lot of their time online, and even if that's not great, they shouldn't do that, there should be restrictions, la la la, reality is that they still do. So I come from a point of okay, the reality is as it is, we should accept it, so what can we do with it? And that means that your body is, I don't know, my average screen time is like three hours. So let's say someone who is 2 years older than me, their average screen time is maybe 5 to 6 hours, maybe even more. So that's a huge amount of time you spend online, and of course that shapes you as a person and the way where your body is present, how are you performing, how are you, almost your whole anatomy kind of starts to change. And yeah, that's what's fascinating to me, how technology is developing choreography, how is making us like docile, how is it's like having this little portal in your hand that is basically a portal through which you're practicing the choreographies of like being an infant to this little thing. So we're like babies kind of with this, we're like addicted to this. It's like your favorite like toy, and if you're without it, you're so lost. You're like, oh my god, what's happening now? I don't know how to come there because I don't have Google Maps, or like, yeah, and I can not spend a day without Instagram. So that does affect our bodies and our chemistries as well, because we are to some point addicted. It's a dopamine addiction. So this whole thing is interesting for me, and how it affects the body on a chemical level.
Okay. Your workshop title Alone My Feed Brings All the Creators to My DMs already hints at the irony of online life. What inspired you to approach social media through this playful yet critical lens?
Because it's ridiculous. I think it is ridiculous that you as an artist have to have social media. You need to be, basically you need to be trained in like digital marketing if you're a young upbringing artist, and that is ridiculous because that's not your job, and why should you do that? And I think this whole situation is a little bit absurd, and it's funny, and it's kind of frustrating also for artists. But sadly, it's necessary, because like if you're not a name that people already know, that is familiar, then I think it gives you a lot of credibility if you have platforms. Like if you're applying for things, if they ask you oftentimes to put your webpage, to put your Instagram name. So this is this playful, ridiculous, absurd reality we live in, but sadly it's necessary. So how can we make the best out of it and make it equally, and look at it equally absurd and unserious, because I think also putting too much pressure on yourself to be super professional is also like, you shouldn't do that to yourself. Your first focus should be your art, and this comes second. So I think that's why.
Yeah, everybody are in the same loop.
Yeah.
In a world where visibility often equals value, how do you personally navigate the tension between authenticity and performance online?
Authenticity and performance online? This is a good question. And I don't know. I see social media as like a platform for people who like to see me doing things, because if and I realize that the posts or stories or the things that I post where I'm just being my silly self, where I absolutely don't care about how I'm going to be perceived, or are people going to think if I'm crazy, or if I'm, I don't know, sharing political opinions that are a bit bold or different. I realize this is the moment where I get the most attention. And because everything else is essentially boring and same. And not to speak about how this existence on platforms have flattened the authenticity fully, and the trends have completely made everything look the same, including everyone's art and feed. So I guess people recognizing and liking when I'm authentic has encouraged me to be even more authentic on social media, where people are usually afraid to be authentic or seen or perceived. I think what happens is, ironically, the people who get the most attention are the ones who are absolutely behaving, however they want, and like pushing the limits of what is already seen. Yeah.
You challenge participants to embrace the cringe and set their online persona free. Why do you think this idea of cringe has become such a powerful emotional boundary in creative self-expression?
I think it's sadly because of social media. I think because of social media, there is this like fear of being perceived so much beyond your comfort zone and beyond your like neighbors and your friends and schoolmates and like older schoolmates and people in bigger cities, or like people who you look up to, that this in the years of when you're developing yourself as a person or developing your career, if you have a baby career, there is this fear of like, oh, how am I going to be perceived? Like, what if it's not good enough? And what if someone doesn't like it? I think social media platforms have brought a lot of these anxieties, and that then comes also with showing your creative work and your creative self. And there's no solution to it. Like the solution against anxiety is just action. So like, honestly, my idea of this whole workshop is just like, just get over it, just try to do it, and then you'll see that it's like self-made fear. It doesn't exist. It just exists in our heads. And the moment you start doing it and you start getting like recognition for it, then it can serve as a really powerful tool, and then it can serve as an online community that can really help you feel better and about your work when you share, and then so many people are liking and posting and find it inspiring. That those are the moments where you're happy. You open the gates towards visibility because you get affirmations, and I think this is the nice part of it. And of course there's always the bad parts, like spending too much time on Instagram, or like being completely sucked into your screen. But I think balance is between bad and good, and you should try to do more good, but inevitably it will also exploit you. I mean, that's what it's made for. So of course we're all a little bit anxious, but if there's more better repercussions to it, then it's still a good tool, which I think it is. And then at the time when you make yourself a name and you don't need it anymore, I mean, that's amazing. But like, how many young professionals are in this position? Not many.
Okay, great. The workshop encourages letting go of fear of being perceived, something many creatives struggle with. How do you feel? How do you deal with that feeling yourself?
I think as a performance artist, I think choosing to be a performance artist, I already like accepted that I'm not gonna deal with that I'm just gonna do that, because it's all about being physically present, or like, I don't know, being embodying different characters or putting yourself in weird situations. It's not making the work that just like exists in a gallery. So I think choosing to be a performance artist is already be accepting that I'm going to be perceived in many different ways. And like a lot of times I need to also talk to myself and tell to myself, maybe not everyone will like this work, and maybe for some people it will not be pleasant, but if I try to please everyone, I'm just flattening my opinion, and I'm becoming affected. My creativity is becoming affected by that, and that's not what it's all about. And of course, being perceived is, in most of the cases, really nice, but sometimes it's not. And I think the reality is to just should be ready for that. And easier said than done. Like, I'm oftentimes dealing with that myself, and I do the works, and before I have to perform, a few days before, I'm like, oh, what did I put myself into? Oh my God, how am I gonna survive this? What if people think that I'm like, what if people like think that I don't know, I have a lot of works with animals, for example. What if people call like animal violence or like animal rights or like things? What if they perceive this differently and they think I'm doing something harmful? But then you realize that it's inevitable to be in this position, especially on the internet, because everyone is so easy to judge. So this will exist, and if this is something that's going to stop you from doing your work, I honestly think that you shouldn't be an artist in that case, because there's going to be so many of these situations on your path. And if Marina Abramovic stopped doing what she was doing every time she got a critic, she wouldn't be the person we know today. It's not always my cup of tea, but I think she's a good example in this realm, because she has been shocking audience for more than 50 years. So yeah, you're going to be perceived, and not everyone is going to like it, and they're going to express that, and that's okay. Not everyone likes pink.
Yeah, good answer. You described the artist as a kind of pseudo-influencer. Do you think artists today have to perform online to remain relevant, or can silence still be a form of resistance?
Honestly, I never try to be fully silent. So from my personal experience, I don't know how is that being manifested. I know I do take like occasional months in a year where, like, for example, 2 times a year, I go off Instagram for 1 month. And as long as this is good for my mental health and for my physical health and for my peace and my productivity in the studio and my focus, at the same time, I realize I'm missing so many opportunities that my peers who are at that time on the internet that have approach to. So it's never black or white. I think if you are an artist that doesn't feel comfortable and fully like doesn't benefit and like has tried to be visible, but you never managed to get anything from it, yeah, maybe then for you you should just try to be silent and use that as a form of resistance, preserve your peace. But if you are seeing any kind of benefits from performing online, and if that is fueling your possibilities and creative self, because it also helps me to keep track of work of people who I admire and who inspire me. Then you should find a balance between you using Instagram and Instagram using you. But I think the silence is not an option anymore. Like, we're being so exploited and everything is so violent that, I mean, we see in this situation where Mark Zuckerberg took over Instagram, and there was, I know, so many creatives who have tried to go off Instagram. Yeah, but we're all back now, because sadly the system is already so strongly embedded that I don't think there is an option not to exist online. I mean, only if you've already done your piece of work and your name speaks for itself. But otherwise, I think silence is a luxury, honestly.
Okay. Social media aesthetics, captions, posting frequency, curated feeds have become a language of their own. What do these visual codes reveal about our collective behavior and need for validation, in your opinion, of course?
There is a huge danger, of course, of being a creative online, of the algorithm influencing your aesthetic and your interests and your opinions. That is then like flattening not just your feed and aesthetic, but also your, authenticity. So I think it's constantly important to remind yourself why you started doing art, and for how is this important to you and why is this important to you. Because I don't think anyone started doing art to be cool on the Instagram. There's always like greater questions that we're trying to answer, or problems we try to tackle, or do it for some kind of purpose that is not so shallow, that is actually pretty deep and complex, and in most of the cases personal. And sometimes being overwhelmed by all the multitask you have to do as an artist makes you forget that. And one of them is being online. Where you inevitably end up comparing yourself to other people. And the algorithm likes artists that are hyper producing, that are posting a lot, there is a special aesthetic that always gets put on a pedestal, and the other one does not. But you should be always reminded that algorithms are biased and that that's not the reality. And although we still spend huge amount of our time online, we still live in the reality called Earth, and that's where we sleep, that's where we live, that's where we get our money from, unless if you're an influencer. So I think that physical reality should be a priority, and from there you should take advantage of the one online. But they need to be really carefully balanced.
You are part of the artist duo Xenophem with Ginevra Petrozzi. Could you share what you brought you two together and what the Xeno in your practice stands for?
Well, Ginevra and me studied together at Design Academy Eindhoven, and we did masters together, and we lived together actually. So we've been friends also from the first day of being in that university. And her work is inspired by spirituality and technology. And my work is more inspired by multimedia and performance. And we thought, let's try to do something together. Let's try to experiment and have fun. Because it is extremely tiring and heavy to sometimes needing to do everything by yourself and being alone in your studio and traveling along to gigs, managing your own productions, writing your own applications, and into when it's the right dynamic, it can be way more fun and way more uplifting. And I think we also wanted to experiment in a sense, what can the work of the other person bring to each other? Like how can we fill each other gaps? And I think that's how we started working together. And xeno means an outsider, an alien, a different. And I think that's how we started approaching this, is by considering like ourselves as an alien towards a certain subject we're dealing with, and then like how can we as like aliens like integrate it then and shift the power dynamics from inside.
Your workshop includes a reading of the Glitch Feminism Manifesto. How does glitch feminism influence your view on digital identity and the body online?
Well, in Glitch Manifesto Legacy, Russell explains, I'm not sure what are their pronouns, to be honest, so I'm gonna assume it's they, them. But if it's not, I apologize. They are using the internet as a mean of changing their identity and becoming someone else. Basically the same concept as catfishing, but using it in a purpose of like trying to become everything that you couldn't become in your reality because you were socially oppressed, or because you were judged, or because you have had a heavy upbringing, and exploring, or because you couldn't express your sexual identity, and then using internet as a platform where you can become everything you ever dreamt of. And I know this sounds a little bit utopian, and the internet is past that point, because now we cannot distinguish bots of cat scammers. So everyone asks you to identify your name with your picture and your real self, because otherwise everyone is going to think it's a scam. So we're past that point of utopia, but I think that we can still embrace other versions of ourselves, but in like micro fragments of, I don't know, I'm sure that not all influencers are living their life completely as we see it. I'm sure they have like different interests that they're not posting online. I'm sure that there's artists who only post their work, who live differently in reality. So I like to think of the online world as a way that you can present yourself in a way that you can manifest and influence your physical reality, because no one is going to check if you put a stamp on your bio saying that you're an artist. Like, it doesn't require a diploma, it doesn't require someone to validate you. So there is an opportunity there to use it in a way how you want to be perceived. And then regardless if you just started doing your thing, if someone sees you online and you're labeled as such and they like your work, they will think you're an artist, even if you don't fully believe that yourself still. And I think this opens an opportunity for you to be fueled by this energy and to be inspired by this energy. And then, this is how manifestations become reality then.
What do you hope participants will take away from your workshop, both in how they see themselves and how they present themselves online?
Well, I hope they're gonna see that the silence is a luxury. And honestly, if you are an artist who tries to earn money from their art, then being silent is not an option. Of course, if you have another source of incomes, you can afford that luxury. But if you want to be truly a professional artist, then sadly you need to obey to these ridiculous system requirements. And to be honest, I don't think that Instagram solely would just take your professional life to the next level or like give you recognitions or opportunities, which sometimes it does, but in most of the cases it necessarily will not. And I can say that for each part of your professional self, which is also a website, you can have it, but you don't have to have it. You can have portfolio online, but you don't have to have it. And these are all choices, sure, but I believe having them all and taking account into everything and putting your energy into everything, but you need to make it intuitive and fun and kind of already natural for yourself. All of these things together, they do make you seem more professional. It's not that one will change your life, but all of them together in a package, I think they do impact the way how you're perceived. Because me, if I'm a curator, I would love to know what's your visual language online, like how many followers you are you engaged, do you have a community, do people look up to you? And it's okay if they don't, but I think if they do, then that's a plus, because it means you have a reach, you have an audience, and that surely makes more impact than if you don't. Sure, there are some people who have huge amount of visitors in their galleries without being socially famous in social media, and that's equally important, and honestly that's even better. But yeah, I don't see why this wouldn't just benefit you. It's also a network. As a professional, often I'm contacting people whose work do I like. I just send them a DM. I'm like, hey, I really love your work. It's so amazing that you're doing this. I would love to speak to you, or like meet and just exchange. And then these people are going to enter your Instagram, and then they're going to see what you're doing, and then they're going to see if you are serious or not, if there's some things in common or not. And in most of the cases, people really like to help you in creative field, because we all know it's a battlefield and it's so difficult. So I would like them to get over this fear of being perceived and thinking that it's completely that is a tool for being exploited, which it is, okay, but you can also use it in a good sense. The system we live in, capitalism, it's extremely exploitive and violent, and the world we live in is extremely exploitive and violent, but you have to find your way around it, and you don't necessarily let it erase you from disappearance.
Okay. And the last one, finally, if your online persona could speak for itself, what would it say about you? Good one.
I think it would say that I'm a bit savage, that I'm maybe a little bit pretentious, that I'm influenced by Balkan aesthetics, that I do not confirm any social norms, that I'm very politically opinionated and not afraid to put that out there, and that I will always try to fight for the oppressed. And I think that's it, and that I try to support my friends.
Okay, that's very cute for you.
Yeah.
That's all. Thank you one more time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. The Professional Media Presence project is co-funded by the Creative Europe program of the European Union. Make sure to follow the updates on our social media, Instagram and Facebook, and visit our website pmpproject.eu. Stay tuned for more episodes.